You're listening to the Add Water and Stir podcast, where we have candid conversations about fostering, adopting, and parenting children of color. I'm Mimi from the blog Mimi Robinson Online, and
I am adoptive Black mom of the blog of the same name.
if you are new to our show, please check out all of our episodes on our site, www.addwaterandstirpodcast.com, or you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast app. You have turned into our special series on the show, This Is Us. And tonight we're talking about episode 15, Jack Pearson's son. So here's the quick recap. Kevin stresses about his play. A tightly wound Randall begins to unravel. Jack and Rebecca's Valentine's Day goes south. So yeah, that's why you need us to give you the details. So
the nitty gritty.
ABM, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
Okay, so like we do every time, we start off with the plot lines that we are least interested in. And once again, Kevin makes it again. Number one or least favorite. Oh, Kevin. Okay, so Kevin's story starts out with he's having an interview with Katie Couric. She wants to bring him back to talking to him about the Manny, and she's having to put words in his mouth. And I'm a little confused while I'm watching this. Like, doesn't he know how to, publicize himself? And then she goes in on him, talking about he slept with the lead actress and the playwright, and does he really take this seriously? And right at the point where I'm like, is this a dream? He wakes up. So Sophia calls him and asks him about the Katie Couric dream. So it's clear right then that apparently they are doing something. And they confirm it because Kevin asks, like, what are they doing? And Sophia says they're cautiously dating. How did he do that? How did he get Sophia to get back with him? Don't do it, Sophia.
Like in one episode.
Do you think that was a good call? I mean, we don't know enough about what's going on, but no, negative.
Yeah, I mean, well, one, I'm just not that invested. But two, I'm just going to chalk it up to the fact that they are childhood sweethearts. And apparently the rope is strong. Anyway.
So Kevin is freaking out because tonight is opening night. So Sophia's not going to be there. Kevin calls Kate. Kate doesn't answer the phone. Sloan shows up, tells him to break a leg and lets him know that the New York Times will review it. And so Kevin freaks out more. He goes to Randall's office and pops up, does a pop-up on him, which I don't understand how that happens. Every place I worked, you had to sign in, get a badge and everything. People just popping up on Randall.
Security.
But, Randall is busy, so he doesn't have time for Kevin. Kevin said. Kevin goes to Miguel and Rebecca's house looking for his mom. She isn't there. And he doesn't really like Miguel, but Miguel invites him in. And because Kevin is so narcissistic, he doesn't even care. Miguel, he doesn't like Miguel, but he just needs somebody to listen to him. So he rambles on. Miguel tells him that he reminds him so much of Jack, and he just hates the fact that they don't get along because he feels like every time he's around Kevin, he sees a little piece of his best friend. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that is really sweet. He says, if you're feeling, scared about something, what I would always do is talk to your dad. And so just think, what would Jack do? WWJD.
Yeah. Right.
So
Jack instead of Jesus.
Kevin's like, great. That's great advice. That's all I needed. And then he tells Miguel, it's not like I don't not like you, but what he really means is, but I just don't like you.
Like you. I will say that, I really liked Miguel in this scene, and I would have to say that Miguel is growing on me. I think that he is so desperate for the kids to like him, these adult kids to like him, and that he is always going to be in their father's shadow, and that they are probably feeling all kinds of ways that he slid in there and married their mother. And it's awkward, but I just feel like he desperately wants to fit in that family, and he just doesn't. So this is like probably, it seems like one of the first opportunities, just because he's the only one around willing to listen, that he finally gets an opportunity to participate and show a little wisdom and give some advice. So good on Miguel.
And we see when we talk about Jack and Rebecca, the fact that Miguel, after he gets a divorce from his wife, he doesn't have a family. And so I'm sure he looks at Jack and sees this beautiful family, he has a beautiful wife. He probably coveted that. So that relationship is a little complex.
Yeah.
There's some more stuff about Kevin, but we'll get back to it at the end. Anything else about Kevin?
But I'll say this, see this later when we'll talk about Randall, that, you know, that relationship is so complicated because I think he always feels like he played second fiddle. And that has made him who he is. And that's sad. It's made him unlikable. It's made him try to figure out who he is so that he can find somebody to like him. And apparently the only person that did like him was Sophie. And then he cheated on her. And, you know, he screwed that up. There's a part of me that feels sorry for him. Feeling sorry isn't quite the right characterization for what I feel for him. But at the same time, I'm just not terribly invested.
On to Kate. At the end of last episode, we saw Kate walking up to the cabin. We were like, no, Kate, don't do it. And we see it's actually cabin 13. But she actually went to tell Duke off about himself. She's awesome and he's miserable. And take that. So
I know, right? She had a pump daddy moment. Take that.
So Duke turns it around and says that his parents own the place and she's done there. And I'm like, there's a lot going on. I mean, Duke is
loser.
Yeah. I mean, your parents own an immersion camp and apparently you have never immersed yourself in it, or you haven't, you have failed at doing it. And instead of like going in the real world, you're just hanging out at the camp, preying on ladies as they show up.
Yeah, he's got lots of issues. Mm-hmm. And then I'm just kind of like, okay, but dude, you are grown. I cannot believe that your parting salvo was, my mom and daddy own this place. And so you're gone. Like, for real? Like, aren't these people like going on 40? What is happening right now?
Oh, Toby is back at the hotel and Kate shows up and surprises him. And Toby is just not impressed. Kate's eating that humble pie. She admits that she was a jerk. And she tells him that she got kicked out, which I was like, so you just took his word for it? This dude is cleaning the horses. I mean, he's not in any administrative capacities. Like, who is he? So I think she just didn't want to stay there anymore.
Yeah, I think she just left. Because I can't believe that some dude that's like 40 had his parents kick you out of fat camp. Like, it
just didn't make sense. Toby's kind of glad because he said he was jealous and worried about Duke. And then he wonders why he's so worried and jealous and realized he doesn't really know her. So last week we said that Kate has some thinking to do. And apparently it's actually Toby that has been thinking that, you know, maybe they need to talk a little more. So they decide to do a little relationship deep dive, which is kind of silly. You know, like it sounds like something that I used to do when I was in college. You know, you'd be going on dates. And so you like write a list of questions. Did you ever do that?
Okay, well, I mean, It does sound like very youthful, but I mean, keep in mind that the whole storyline is just ridiculous because she got kicked out of a camp by somebody's parents.
They're shopping. They're talking about crushes, pets, high school. He likes fashion. And you know what? Actually, Toby is a little fashionable. He does, you know, bring some little pizzazz. So they're keeping it cute until Kate just slips in this question about his suicidal tendencies, which kind of throws the whole conversation off whack. And I'm like, so if y'all hadn't decided to do this deep dive, when were you planning to ask him about his mental health? After the wedding? So Toby reveals that he's always struggled with depression from a teenager. And then when his wedding broke up, that was the closest he came to suicide. And it sounds like it was a half-hearted attempt. And since then, he's gone to therapy. He's done a lot of work on himself. So now he's like, your turn. So what's this deal about your dad's death? And apparently she shut this conversation down before, and she cannot even start. It's just too painful. And I'm like, well, what happened? Tell us. So yeah. Toby's so nice. He lets her off the hook. And then finally, kind of the end part of what happens with Toby and Kate is that Toby finally tells him that he's uncomfortable. He thinks they rushed into things. He still wants to get married, but he thinks they should just hang out as engaged people and talk about
Life.
just learn about each other. And he says that he feels like they should be able to talk to each other about everything, which I'm not, as the married person, I'm like, everything, but okay.
And the single person over here just defers because on the front side of marriage, that's what you think is supposed to happen. But again, from the married side, I see and hear my colleagues saying,
I mean, everything is a lot. I don't want to talk to anybody about everything. There are some things that you need to hold for yourself. I do understand this sentiment that your husband is supposed to be your best friend and you should talk to him about everything. But I feel like husbands are husbands. That's different than best friend. And it's all encompassing. It's just something completely different. It shouldn't even be on the same plane as best friend. But anyway, I digress. Any
all
other
right.
things about Toby and Kate?
So you was all right with that suit?
I mean, it's not my style, but I appreciate that he has a style.
Okay.
I mean,
Let me
he's
tell
been
you
looking kind of
something.
flashy since we've seen him. He's always
Yeah.
been wearing bright colors. He wears tennis shoes that light up like a kid,
I
like
mean, it
so
was
what can
classic
you
Toby.
expect?
It's classic Toby, and you know what? She likes it. I love it. So, but
Exactly.
I'm gonna
That's how I
just
feel
tell you
about it.
what. We got a black tie event next month, and I wish he would show up in that get up. Go sit in the car right now.
And it does seem like Toby would show up like, hey, and be real loud about it. I appreciate his zest for life. You know what? I also
Yeah,
appreciate him throwing off those shackles of what big people should wear. Like they're supposed to be quiet and wear black and try to look thin and everything. Like I'm big. Everybody knows I'm big. I like colors. So here we go.
right.
And I
So
appreciate that about him.
I'll say this. I think that Toby and apparently Beth, who we'll talk about later, are the most authentic people
Yeah.
on the show. I mean, Toby is like, what you see is what you get. I am
Yeah.
big. I am flashy. I like to eat. I'm loud. I'm funny.
Mm-hmm.
And like what you see is what you get. And I appreciate that.
So on to Jack and Rebecca. So it's Valentine's Day. And instead of making him a nice, cute little card, Rebecca's making out a list because she is going on a month-long tour. Jack is like, I don't need this list. I'm good. What is it with us women feeling like the men can't take care of things? We need to let some of that go.
We do. And I think it's not just that they can't take care of things. They won't do it like we do it. Like, and I think that that's our hang up. It's not just that they won't do it, but we have an expectation that it be done the way we would do it. And that's
And
not realistic.
I also think it's true that women are kind of like the running in my family, the way it works. My husband can do very concrete things, but I have a running tally of everything that has to be done, right? Like
Right.
doctor's
Right.
appointment schedule, the fact that play dates and everything. My husband's like, oh, it's a play date on Friday. I'll take you to the play date. But he's not thinking through the week. I need to set up play date, so
Right.
I can understand why
Right.
she's making out that list, but at the same time, I'm also like, Rebecca, let it go, girl. Just go. They do O'Shannon's for Valentine's Day every year. Jack's reserving a booth under Muhammad Ali. This family loves their special booths, like
Yeah, they
they have
do.
to sit in the same place every time. So Miguel is asking Jack, is he handling the tour? Jack is kind of like, yeah, I'm good. Miguel presses and he's like, no, I'm not good. We got 3 teenagers at home and she wants to go off on this tour. He's like, and I can't say anything because I don't want her to be mad at me. I don't want her to resent me, but I don't really want her to go. And then this dude in the band likes her. And so I'm uncomfortable with that. Miguel reassures him that Rebecca's not that type of girl. This is the same lady who said her husband was a Superman. So,
Right.
but Miguel's ready to get in the dating pool. He wants Jack to, hang out. Jack is like, yeah, sure, come to Rebecca's gig. The 3 siblings come from school. Rebecca overhears that Kevin is having sex with Sophia.
Mm-hmm.
So, but this is
Mm.
what I caught from that whole conversation. First, when they come in, Kevin asks Kate who is desperate enough to go on a date with Randall. So that made me feel some kind of way, like, what's that about? And maybe that's just good old natured ribbing between siblings, but I felt
some kind of way about it.
yeah, I did. Like, what do you mean? Who's desperate enough to go on a date with Randall? And the only thing I can think of is like, because it's all white kids, so they're like, who wants to go, hang out with Randall? And then
Go hang
the
out with Randall. And he's also, at that age, considered a nerd.
that is true. He is quite dorky at that point. The other thing that was interesting to me is when Kevin walks off and tells Kate that he disowns her and she's detwinned. And I was like, so clearly they didn't fall for this whole triplet thing.
One
They
of your
know that
kids
they
is
are
doing his
twins
own thing.
and Randall is just there, So he's like, we're detwinned. We're not de-tripled or whatever the corresponding word would be. So Jack and Rebecca are having a talk with Kevin about sex. They're focusing their attention on Kevin, and then Randall shows up hyperventilating about his Hamlet paper, and everybody focused their attention on Randall and forgets about this conversation. And it's a very important conversation that they need to be having, but they forget about the conversation with Kevin to go handle whatever's going on with Randall. Again, we see why Kevin acts the way he does with Randall. Every time he's getting some good attention, everybody diverts to focus on Randall. I also am wondering about Randall's need to be perfect. Did you pick that up? This need to be an A student and need to have everything right. When we talk about adoption narratives, that's something that does come out, like this need to show that they're perfect so that their families may not want to get rid of them. Like they might have felt rejected from their original families.
Yeah. Perfectionism is a real issue for many adoptees. And I will say that I think that the show does a really good job of showing an adoptee dealing with this and the pressure that, it brings about. I think that Jack and Rebecca really missed the mark on that because they could have divided the work, if you will.
Yeah, they could have.
Right? But it's like once Randall shows up, Jack gets distracted and goes off with Randall. And then Rebecca is just like, oh, okay, well, I
What
guess
do I
that's the end of
do?
the conversation.
Yeah. And is it that she doesn't feel like she can talk to Kevin about sex, or this is something that both of them need to do? Yeah, we didn't get insight into why she didn't feel like continuing the conversation, or did she just forget what they were talking about? So
Also, like his father is like yelling when they switch to that scene as Jack is like, condoms, condoms. And I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute. Is this the first conversation that we're having about this subject matter? You kids are teenagers.
Interesting. So Rebecca doesn't want to go. It's too much happening. And Jack, he's already said that he really wants her to stay, but he does not give her any indication that he feels like that. And I think that is so sweet because a lot of times people will say you can go, but then make you feel bad about going. And Jack really doesn't do that. And I appreciate that about them. They're at Rebecca's gig. Miguel sending drinks to the brunette over in the corner. Jack's distracted because Rebecca and the piano player are singing kind of a duet to each other. And on stage when people sing to each other, that's part of the show, but Jack is feeling some kind of way about it. After the show is over, the piano player, whose name is Ben, comes up and saying, hey, I'm so glad that we get to go on this trip and everything. And he lets it slip that they used to be together. And
let it slip.
Jack is like, what? But then Jack tries to save face. And he tries to be like a mean guy, and it just didn't work. Ben is confused. And I'm like, Rebecca should know that she should have told Jack.
Yeah.
So Jack decides to cancel O'Shannon. He's doing the passive aggressive thing that people do. They finally found it out. Jack is like, dude, why didn't you tell me? She's like, it was just 2 months. I was 19. Like, we're 50 years old now. I don't know how old they are, but but still, it was
it was a long time ago.
And I knew how you would act. If I just told you, you would act crazy and jealous, and I really wanted to do this. And Jack is like, by not telling me, that's a lie. And so I don't know. What do you think about that? It seems like Rebecca has a problem with this. When I want to do something, I'll just keep information to myself.
Yeah. And I mean, their relationship always seems to be so transparent. They have this really deep relationship. And so it's not that she feels neglected at all. It's that as a mom, I think that maybe she hasn't had a lot of time for has been, kind of this stay-at-home mom. She has like done everything for everyone. She has been that home manager, making the play dates, doing everything, years and years and years and years. And when it all kind of comes out, she's like, I just wanted this one thing for me, and I didn't want anyone to get in the way. Now, do I think that it was wrong for her not to tell him? Yeah. At the same time, I'm like, 2 months.
So
Like,
here's the thing. If oh boy saw her lady parts,
okay,
then
yeah.
you can't be in a
Then
band.
you can't, yeah,
No,
you can't.
there's nothing there. We cannot
Now
overcome
you can't go
this.
on. Not
You
that you can't go on tour. We can't be in the band.
We're not talking about y'all had a little, boyfriend kiss in the shed when you were 10 years old. 19, people getting it in. And
Right.
so if there was ever any consummation of the relationship, you cannot be hanging out like that. She knew that this would be a big deal. And I understand it. I do, because I have one of those husbands who gets crazy and jealous about small things. But this is kind of a big thing. What it does is it makes
Yeah.
him look stupid in front of the other dude, you know?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So the Ben slips out that we used to date and Jack doesn't know it. That is
Yeah.
probably
She set him up.
devastating. And then on the other side, I would not want that to be done to me. I would hate to, show up and I'm, doing my best to not be jealous of this woman, who is really into something that my husband's into. And then I find out that they, had a
Used to
fling.
get.
She knows something about us and you that I don't know, which puts me at a disadvantage. And that's not what you do to your spouse. So
Yeah.
yeah, so Jack ends up at Old Shannon's by himself and he takes a drink. Foreshadow going on. So Randall
Oh,
is out
Randall.
running, and he's looking good in his workout gear, wasn't he? He was looking, get
Hey.
it? With your nice muscular self. So he's having flashbacks about all the stresses, his work, William, his mom, he just can't take it. So he, stops running. And that's when we see the booty shot. And I was like, "Ooh, Randall got a
Hey.
nice tight derriere, So Kevin is running too. He gives him a good natured ribbon. Randall runs off. Kevin is kind of looking confused. So he knows his brother is off a little bit.
Yeah.
Randall takes a shower. His hand is still shaking. He meets Beth down in the kitchen like they always do. Beth is dressed like she going somewhere, and we do not know where Beth is going. Where is Beth going? We want to know. Beth, what do you do all day, girl? Where are you going? Do you have a job? Are you going to brunch? Are you
She had that
on a
hair laid
committee?
though.
And she changes up her hair all the time,
And how the kids weren't dressed. I mean, like when Randall leaves, he's like, y'all get dressed before, get dressed or whatever, because clearly that's not Beth. I'm like, what is Beth doing? I want to be Beth.
Yeah, Beth is like, I'm getting my coffee and the rest of y'all need to handle yourself. So, he kind of mentions that he was up late with William. So that kind of gives us an indication that William is sick in the nighttime. So Randall has to stay up with him and nurse him. And William feels bad about it. He was like, look, my boo Jesse said he will come and, if you can't handle it. And Randall is like, I got this. Beth's sister calls and she says that Beth's mother slipped and broke her hip, so she has to leave and go to DC. Kevin's play is tonight. The girls are arguing. Too much is going on. Randall, Randall now
William
need
has fallen
William.
into the thing.
It's too much. It's too much for me. It was too much going on in the house right there for me. So Randall tells the girls end of discussion. So anyway, Randall gets to work at 11:30, and then the boss says he needs to move a client meeting up, and Randall isn't ready because life is happening to him. And boss is like, Sanjay can take the call, and Randall's like, I got it. That's when Kevin shows up trying to, dump his problems on somebody, and Randall is like, look, I gotta go. William has kicked the nurse out and locked her out. So he goes home. The hospice nurse is outside. William's in the bedroom. William's like, she wouldn't let me have a Coke. And that's when you know that William is really deteriorating, because William's not really a mean dude, right?
No.
So The fact that he is getting to the point where he's kicking people out means that something is seriously, wrong. And
Yeah.
William's scared. He's just like, every day something is going wrong with my body, and I just
Yeah.
don't know how long I'm going to be able to do this. It's really a sad scene. And Randall's like, I really want to be here, but I gotta go. And I think Randall leaves not only because he has work to do, but Randall can't control what's happening with William. He needs
Right.
to be in control of something. And before that, there used to be work. Now work is even slipping, but at least if he goes back to work, he knows what he's doing at work. I don't know how to handle what's going on with William.
Right.
So Randall shows up, meetings in progress. He's right on time to talk the numbers, but Randall is off. Sanjay steps in to try to help out, and Randall can't pick up the pass, so Sanjay takes over. And here's the thing, the whole time Randall has been setting up Sanjay as like his competitor, but we have never seen Sanjay covertly or overtly try to take over Randall's job. I think that was the boss. And I feel like when Sanjay steps in, I felt like it was a kind gesture. It didn't seem to me like I'm just going to step in and take over. It was more like, let me try to help you out because I see that you are a little off. What did you
Struggling.
think? Yeah. What
Yeah.
did you?
Well, yeah, I do think that, he starts off and very tentatively like, well, the weather patterns are doing such and such, right?
Yeah,
Like
he's trying to give him
maybe
a pass. Like, can
like
you pick
let
it
me
up
help
from
you
there?
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and once he realizes that he's falling apart, he like just goes ahead and takes the iPad and proceeds. But I mean, that scene just broke my heart on so many levels because then we see the tear
Oh, Randall drops a tear at work. And, I am the
in front of a
ABM.
room full of white people.
I was like, let's talk about what it means for a Black person to cry at work. Like, that is one of the things that I was told. Do not cry at work. Don't cry
Ever,
at work. I don't
ever.
care what's going on. Even if you need to go to the bathroom, do not cry at work. So the fact that he's also a Black man crying at work, like, everything has to be overwhelming. He has lost complete control. And how devastating for all those sometimes tears are not things that you can control. All that emotion built up just comes out in the form of tears. And I was like, oh my gosh, Randall is crying at the office. You
In a
just,
meeting.
mm,
Mimi, I have gone into the garage and the basement of my office building
mm-hmm.
to shed tears
Yeah.
in the back seat.
Yes.
like,
Yes.
so nobody would see me. Like,
I have
because the
closed myself
bathroom
in
wasn't
a
even.
conference room with the
Yes,
lights off.
yes. And, I don't even like to do it in the bathroom because people could be coming and going. Like, it's just, you can't be vulnerable. Like, we don't have the luxury of being vulnerable like that at work,
Mm-mm.
ever. We already see that his boss gives no F's about the fact that he has
Mm-mm.
crazy life stuff happening.
Nope.
Now, I imagine that, Randall probably isn't terribly forthcoming because that's not our, like, what we do either. You don't tell all your business in the office either. But when he gets in late, he's like, hey, there's some stuff happening. My mother-in-law broke her hip, whatever, kids, blah, blah, blah. His boss is like, I don't care. Personal problems.
Yeah.
And so for him to break down in the midst of that is just, my heart ached.
Any Black person watching that, like, that is just the rule. You don't cry at work. Do not let them see you sweat. Do not show that vulnerability because you have worked so hard to get to wherever you are, and then that just feels like you just, now people know that they can prick you. It was awful. So
It was awful.
we see Randall. I'm all getting a little emotional right now,
I
but
know,
anyway.
I know.
So we see Randall later. It's late. It's dark. I mean, he's still at work. His hand is shaking. He's losing his eyesight. He's crying. Randall decides to go ahead and call Kevin and tell him that he can't make it. blames it on the office. Of course, Kevin is like, oh, this is, normal for him. People just don't show up for him. And he says, you see it eventually. And I think Randall is crying because he's like, I'm not actually sure I'm going to be able to see anything. I think
Yeah.
Randall is extremely scared. So we come to the end of the episode, and the way it ends is curtain calls. Kevin has just had this conversation with Randall. He's waiting to go on stage. Sloan goes on stage, starts the show, and Kevin has missed his cue. He is not where he's supposed to be. And we see Kevin running down the street. And I'm like, where's Kevin going? Where is he running to? And he runs to find Randall in his office. And we see Randall curled up in the corner, bawling. And Kevin goes and sits down with him and basically cradles his brother.
Yeah.
And it's such a touching moment because we don't see that much intimacy on television between men in that way. And Kevin has just put everything on the line for this. Like, that was
Yeah.
a huge sacrifice. That was the ultimate sacrifice for him to give. The New York Times was coming to see him. He basically bankrolled this. He's the star
Yeah.
of the show. He's trying to get people to take him seriously, but all of that doesn't matter when it comes to family. And that was just amazing. It's probably the first time I really felt like I had any feeling about Kevin, on the show.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he that phone call really kind of sets off a set of, I guess, thoughts for Kevin, because trying to be a little passive aggressive, like, oh, okay, you'll see it sometime, blah, blah, blah. He realizes that his brother is not even giving appropriate responses. Like, it's not just some BS that Randall is telling him. He gets off the phone and he's waiting for a curtain call and he knows that it's going to be soon. Then he goes, well, he thinks back to Miguel's advice and says, what would Jack do? And then the scene shifts to Sloan. She says her lines, and then, of course, Kevin misses his cue, and we see him running down the street. And then we see a flashback of when they were young, in that moment when his parents were talking to him about sex, and then that conversation was interrupted because Randall comes in upset about Hamlet, and he sees his brother later when he's kind of going to the shower, kind of having a meltdown about not being perfect, not knowing what to do about this assignment. And he decides not to comfort his brother. And in this moment, he decides to do what his father would have done and go and comfort his brother. And it was really, I was like, okay, there's hope for Kevin.
Mm-hmm. It was a full circle moment because we have seen them be distant throughout this whole time. I mean, they're brothers. They talk sometimes, but this was the first time that we saw Kevin make that sacrifice for his brother, that he really shows that we are brothers. It was beautiful.
It was. But, it is pretty foreshadowing because we didn't realize earlier in the season when Beth is talking to William about Randall, and she sees her that is mounting with him. We see that there's a lot going on in his life, but we now see just how bad it really gets for him and how anxious he gets. So I'm waiting for Beth to come back. Yeah, life is happening. But here's the other thing that I think is really important for our listeners to understand, and it goes along with being in the office, is that I think that a lot of Black folks who are super high achievers also suffer from anxiety, because I think that you're just kind of battling against so much, and that even though you work so hard and you might be rewarded, it is all so fleeting. And I think that everybody realizes that across race, across gender, all of those things, that it's fleeting. But the reality is, in living in a highly racist, institutionalized society, you realize that so fleeting. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. Well, I have my suspicions of how his boss is going to react next week
Mm-hmm.
after he bombed that meeting and drop some tears. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is like end of the world for Black folk.
Yeah. He's going to be like, you need to take some time. But
Right.
and then, so in addition to that anxiety that comes with the pressure of being a Black person who is high achieving and dealing with severe cases of imposter syndrome, and
Yeah.
just understanding that we have a tenuous grasp on middle class or upper middle class or wherever we
Mhm.
get that, we understand that we can slip back down there very quickly. If you add on to that the other pieces of adoption, which is I
Mhm.
also have this desire to be perfect so that I'm not rejected in any way. I've already been rejected once, so I'm trying to make sure that I don't create any situation where people have a reason to push me away again. And so I think it's important to like add that on to it too. There's other things
Mhm.
that are happening with Randall. Ugh,
Yeah.
it's just too much. It's too much.
It is. It is.
So, yeah, so this was a pretty good episode. I enjoyed it. So, this has been our recap of This Is Us, episode 15. Make sure to check out our most recent episode of Add Water and Stir podcast. Let us know what you think about our recap or digest. Share our podcast with other people. Let them know they can get some good dish from us. So, we're going to close on out. ABM, where can they find you?
You can find me on my blog at adoptiveblackmom.com, on Facebook, Pinterest, and the Twitters, also at Adoptive Black Mom. Where can they find you, Mimi?
You can find me on MimiRobinsonOnline.com, or you can find me on Twitter at MimiComplex. And with that, we're going to close it out. So talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.